Okay, so working with the principle that you can have multiple different versions of a particular lecture recording saved and stored in your OneDrive so that you can access them, download them and work on them in Audionotetaker on different Imperial College London PCs. That means that you could take one of these versions and just modify the lecture as much as you like in order to make it accessible to you, safe in the knowledge that you've got a backup stored as well. So the kind of things I'm talking about are going to relate to this section button first of all. And the section button here is primarily used for students who maybe have Audionotetaker installed on a laptop and maybe they're recording live and making section breaks as they're recording directly into their computer. But you can also add section breaks after you have made a recording. So after you have taken a recording from the Sonocent Recorder app and put it onto your computer. And that's useful because if you're listening back to a part of your lecture and maybe at this point here the lecturer makes reference to a subject that you think could be well supported by an image that you found online, you can actually right click on that block of audio and we can go down to split chunk. And the reason that you might want to do that is that if you want to edit your audio at exactly that point, it means that when you press the section button, it's going to split it just at that point and put in a space for a new slide at that point. So now there's nothing to stop you jumping into Google, maybe finding an image, right clicking and copying that image, going back into Audionotetaker, right clicking and pasting into that section. So now you've modified the lecture to make it a bit more accessible to you, because when you're listening back to this in full screen mode, which we'll look at later, you've chosen images which are going to best support the audio that you're hearing in order to support you to revise more effectively. So that's kind of an active learning strategy. Rather than passively just going through the lecture, you're actually bringing your own ideas to the lecture and modifying it in order to embed that learning. Now let's say that we wanted to add our own image just at this point in the lecture. So maybe the lecturer has made reference to something which you have seen really well expressed in a diagram. And again, you could go and copy and paste an image after you've used the section button to create a space in between these two slides. But let's imagine that that diagram is in a PDF file, so you can't copy and paste the image. Well, in this instance, I'd load up the PDF file and then use this capture button. So with the cursor placed in this slide, what's going to happen is that when I click on the capture button, Audionotetaker is going to shrink down, and I'll just move it to the bottom of the screen, and we've got this box that we can now move around on the screen. And we can actually place it over the diagram and shrink it down. And when I click on the photograph button, that is going to take a photograph of that particular image. And if we go back into Audionotetaker, what we should find is that it has placed that image as a slide in between the slide that you had selected and the following one. So in this instance, you'd actually have to go and select the audio. So let's say the lecturer first started talking about that diagram here. We'd select it and you can literally pick up and drag the audio into the next slide. So that's quite important. There's nothing to stop you taking audio and moving it and reordering it. Do remember to keep a backup version of the original lecture, because it's easy to make mistakes and lose audio. You might even decide as you scroll down through your lecture that one of your slides, which is just filled with text, would also be better represented with an image, but actually you don't want to lose this text. So in this instance, we're going to have a look on the right hand side of the screen, and remember, when you click on any of the individual panes, it changes all the controls on the right hand side of the screen. So if I click on text, remember it's going to change it to text controls here. But if we're in the images pane, we've got this opportunity to extract text from the slides. Now you could put this straight into the text window, but what I haven't mentioned is that one of the panes is actually turned off, and it's turned off by default in the first place. We've got this additional pane called the reference pane. Now if you click on that, you get another box that you can place text in, and typically you can put whatever you want in the reference pane. It's just another place to put text. Some people write their notes in the text pane and put web links and book information into the reference pane. So I'm going to go ahead and extract text from this slide into that pane. If I go to the right hand side of the screen, I can extract text either from all of the slides or this slide. So I'm just going to do this slide, and when I click on that, I've got the option to either send it to the text pane or the reference pane. So if I click on reference pane, it's pulled out all the text there. So I haven't lost anything by removing this slide because all the text is still there in my reference pane. Now I can right click and delete this slide, and I can go back into Google, choose a more relevant image to that slide. I'm going to copy that image that I've searched for on Google Images back into Audionotetaker and paste that image in. The other advantage of having text removed from a slide and placed in the reference pane is now we can actually listen back to that text as well. So you've got this speak control. I could get the software to read just this section by clicking on speak.
A timely conclusion. Assignment.
And if you don't like that voice, you might find there are some other voices installed on the computer, and you can change those in speech settings. Also, you can take that text and actually turn it into audio in the audio pane here. So I could say send speech to audio pane. That has now added an audio version of that text with the voice that we just heard. So you could delete that text and just have it appended to the end of what the lecturer was saying here.
Please do note the submission deadline of the 5th of November.
A timely conclusion. Assignment. Analyze the extent to which.
Of course, you can do that with your own notes as well. So you could get it to read back your notes, and you could send your notes as audio to the end of the slide, so that if you then selected all of the audio and exported it here, as we saw in the previous video, you've got an audio version of the lecture which includes all your notes spoken aloud as well. So that's quite useful if your end game here is to get the audio into your OneDrive folder so that you can listen back to it on your phone later on. Although if you do want to now work back through this entire lecture on your computer, we've got this full screen mode as well. So if I click on that, we're going to see a much larger version of the slide. You can actually drag this bar down if you don't want to see your notes. And we can scroll back up to the beginning, place the cursor wherever we like, and it'll start playing from that point.
Experiment in 1971, which I would
And when it gets to the end of the audio, it will automatically move on to the next slide.
Forward in time, so far. The concept of time dilation, or
the other thing to mention is that if you did want to make edits to your notes as you saw them appearing at the bottom here, that's not really what this interface is for. This is designed so that you're just concentrating on listening back to the lecture. If I click in here and try and type, it actually makes that noise. It's telling me I can't actually type into here. But if I click on the X button here and I press play,
at everyday speeds, the differences are infinitesimally small. So to us, time appears constant. But the effect becomes...
Okay, so you saw there that it brings up a little icon that allows you to scroll to exactly where your lecture is playing from.